The following is my study in the seeking to review the investigation of the impeccability of Christ, or well known as Christ, for Christus, from a historical theological gay point of view. Two camps emerge by a sinner on either side of this debate. The one camp is who has hold to the posse non peccari, which is to say the ability not to sin, otherwise known as the peccability view. The other camp, it holds to non passare e peccare view, which means is to say inability to sin, otherwise known as the impeccability view, by the Ginji. While both camps affirm the sinless perfection of Christ, they oppose each other while we are all beneath. We have sinned and we have wanted to give more than we could, and we couldn't have. It is the view of this article in the non possere peccare view, which squares my historical theology. By serving and surveying and being subservient, church councils they uppity gib dip to the present times, as I aim to make this more Gen Z coded. Introducing the proofs of the history of the systematas in the established relationships between Christus and the history of the relation of origin of sin. In the first section of the main body, I survey and survey everyone. I evaluate the position from a peccability point, and at the same time I propose the validation of the point departure. In the second section, I assess the acknowledgments and the arguments for bars at airports and prove the necessity of it in the exoneration of Christus person. It is a verifiable fact that every major religion in this world, such as Buddhism, it leaves alone Judaism and Catholicism and has some view of Christ. For the most part, the view would be that one should be at respect. Cassidy 2005-79, and an effort to survey the queer eye history with a church that will show her in her own slowness to see the implications of the faith. True blood. And this is her weakness to spot the dangers of her detractors. Issues within the church have raged before, and denying Christus is divine is an binatism, subordinalism. It's an adoptionism of the Arianism, and it's a semi-Arianism. To deny this is to deny and its demise of humanity. Docetism, Gnosticism, Apollinarism, and monotheism. Church history demonstrates that it's the pendulum that swung to both extremes. Furthermore, the doctrine of the Christ was also subjugated to confusing parts of his nature. The two subdivisions of the Chalcedonium, Constantinople in AD 381 and 356 days combined to bury the burial sites, the bones, the heresies, and the early church was on quest to harmonize Jesus and his humanity and deity in the early forms of the church and the Berkhof. Soldiers, scholars, theologians, and theologicians of both sides have found themselves defining humanity and excluding no one. There, they found that defending this deity and at the expense of humanity, and they found some measures to harmonize with the two natures they fused. And so indistinctly that was proven, anything was proven. Notwithstanding, we also agree with the frame that the delusional historical schools are thought to be useful in categorizing for the analysis but the poor. They have been said to be considerably more impeccable than Christ remains and productive engagement, the absence of which will not allow the theologian to delve into more magic. Problem statements and the through lust and apostolic trust, preaching, proving Jesus. Luke, you inform us that the verse of the appearance explained by this QR code. Scriptures that reveal Christus had to suffer and rise again from the form of the dead that were very verses. And in that verse, the words that do sounded very resoundingly. The harmonies of those two natures and accepting their mystery in the same context. The gospel of Evan, the name burst, and denying the gospel is the element of Robert while it's static. While the component of the apostolic preaching reaped multitudes on the elect harvest of Luke and Anne's, Warfield advised, we are to seek out Christianity in a less unstable basis. And by unstable, he's referring to the confused. It's Christus, dogmatic and historical, lesser than the subordinates beyond him is a myth. Added to this problem is the fact that the process that the theology undergoes leaves us to the vestiges of light. The origin, constructed allegorical paradigm is replaced by Augustine's Belito, which is explained by Frame. Was it in truth replaced by Aristotle's band of Christianity, which in turn was overthrown by the Reformation and the Reformed postmodernists? It's in an article, Today Christianity Marks Null, 2005. It's pointing out the great relevance in the creed of Chow. So it's fully divine, however, this is great. Although this illustrates a time in consuming paths, I warn you, if the Christian thinker is admirably comfortable, the understood and outside forms of faith end by saying essentially nothing. The Christian goal is to gospel in a unique message that is completely and totally indifferent in every respect, propounding as it does the majesty and uniqueness of Jesus Christus and Yeshua. And this writer is nothing more than relevant today given our penchant for reinventing Christus and signing under the commercial contract. Therefore, the message is impeccable in its countercultural essence. The claim of impeccability theologians have genuinely tempted Gazer and Rowe. Wow. This is questioned on the basis of the abducted temptation that is not proven it's a template, but rather to prove that it's impeccable for the shedding of the hand, insisting on the possession of flesh that does not go through Genesis 3 and True Blood 1967-59. It reckons that any theology which is not a direct challenge to the assumption of the philosophical natura is elucidating the articulation. It's homogeneous in its secular culture of the church. That is to say, we're not trying to defeat, and we are trying to access whatever we can. Most errors have risen in defective views, and this is post-Thomas 1940. I have been in an insect form for so long. And the chief of these weaknesses would have competed with the disregarded for the inferior creature. For Hume, the measure is a person's weakness to make his inferiority known. Thus applied to the Christus, he would conclude that, what would he conclude? It's a lamentable, yet unexpected, and the skeptical font. With me in mind, I accept. That is a foundational word of King David, maybe? Whoa, maybe. This could be empathic for the impeccability argument. I'm viewing the debate and I'm discussing this issue. I've had this for a very long time. This Arian heresy all over again, sympathetically providing one who can deal with all of this adultery for Jesus. The Buddhist scholars Matilda argues that revealing the awareness within oneself is a strange nature of woman's. According to the scholar, sympathized with her as proof in the sinfulness and not sacredness. This may be of immense corroboration of the seams at the impeccability based on this human. Jesus isn't a cure. He's not. He goes on to argue that this is a supernatural state of substance, the elimination of which would evaporate. Yes, in the gospel of neither mentioning nor inferring the divine Timothy and declaring the Lord of the Lords. This is a category. Hello. Although written by the Greeks themselves in Hebrew constructs as a Greek thought would be a legend one day. This is when they write the light of power everlasting on this nod. His divinity, intoxicated, linked to his humanity in such a fusion and beyond the scope of any scientific distinction, his human nature enabled him. It's confused. It's subtracted. It's a form non other than Grudem, 2007, 538, 539. And it makes it clear that in human nature never existed apart from union with his divine mother. This union took place at his conception. This is why we argue about this all day long. Therefore, it's a proclivity sin to be assumed in human nature. It must also be assumed, for the God cannot. Sir? Hello?